Welcome to part 2 of this code review. This is the YouTube downloader application. We covered part 1, which is the front end in our previous video. And in this video, we're going to cover part 2, covering the back end, Django with Python. So let's get started. First step we're going to cover is the models, serializers, URLs, and views. Now, in my last video, when I just posted about 5 huge mistakes everyone makes with Django, we cover kind of serializers and URLs and this whole setup and why this is set up this way. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. I highly recommend it. It's a super short video. I'm also going to have other videos popping up every now and then about like how to set up serializers and models and all that. So we're not covering that in this video, but if you're interested, follow along, check out my other videos. Okay, so starting with the model, we have a download model because this is actually saving the YouTube videos when it downloads them. And I don't have a whole lot of critique or changes I would make to this section. I mean, I did write it all, but in general, like, it's actually pretty standard. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that UTC is right here, and I don't believe UTC is being used by this model, so it's an unnecessary. Eventually it will be, but it's not currently, so really this should be commented out because it's not being used, just wasting space. All right, going on to serializers, we have download serializer, which goes to that download object model. Title ID, mime type, okay, all that's fine. Again, I built this, that's all fine. URLs, I actually don't remember. Okay, pretty simple. I don't like that actually at all. That's going to change. I think there's a lot cleaner way of doing that. It just kind of takes up so much space for nothing. Like, look at that. It's just, So that would be one thing I would fix. Just clean that up a bit. Patterns, download status, get options. Those are all fine. That's a pretty clean setup for that. Again, useless comment in here that does absolutely nothing. We can get rid of that. Okay, moving on. I'm not going to save that. 2. Views.py. Okay, you can just look at what's there and you can see just how messy this already looks. Now, here's the thing. Python is designed, like, from its creation to be a beautiful language. So if you look at a piece of code like this, you're like, I don't know what I'm looking at so much. It can be improved. The whole design, the whole reason Python exists, or one of the primary reasons Python exists, is to be very readable, even by an average reader. So a lot of this can get cleaned up. I organize it by type, but like, let's just block that out. Okay. URL.parse. I try to keep like the longer ones kind of with the longer ones if possible. So like that can go there. See, import threading can go like, nope. How about there? There you go. And already in like a couple of seconds, we've already greatly improved the import statements. We've got all the froms, we've got the imports. Okay. Checking out the view. Okay, so I've got a print statement with a lot of white space. This is in production. That's scary. This doesn't need to be here. Just for production, then it should have been pulled out. Again, an extra white space, but that's all right because it's let's see. Check cache videos first. Yeah. I'll walk through all this in a second. I'm just gonna do a quick first glance overall response. Again, extra white space, lots of white space here. There's a little too much white space happening. Some threading happening. We'll get back to that in a second. That doesn't need to be a white space. My rule of thumb is for white space is white space after a section, not before the section, okay? So, we have a section, we white space after it, have, a section, white space after it. So sometimes I'll do stuff like that, or it's white space like that, because it kind of separates it out. Okay, again, another print statement, get rid of that. Another print statement, get rid of it. Okay. Bunch of variables. These can go in order of like length. Again, make it beautiful. White space, get rid of it. So we've got a block of like stuff equals stuff. We've got a for loop. This is pretty clean actually. This is actually pretty decent. Like this right here is what I shoot for when it comes to white spacing and how I spread everything out and kind of lay it out. So this bottom section, get YouTube video ID was actually pulled from a GitHub repo. I'm using it with their credit, and I think I modified it slightly, but basically all this does is gets a video ID from a URL. Now, I'm going to go ahead and make this comment. Okay, so here's a bunch more. functions like this, which aren't directly API related. So this is our views file, right? So functions like these should go into another file, either like a utils.py or functions.py. Typically I go with utils.py, utils.py. And I usually put these in there and then I just import them into this file. It keeps this file clean, it keeps everything organized. And I mean, typically my views.py file will end up with, 15 different API endpoints and 1,000 or 2 lines of code. So having functions in their own file is tremendously helpful in both finding them, modifying stuff, seeing how things come together. It's just good organization, okay? Download video, okay. Let's make sure white space, commented outline that could probably be deleted. Too much white space there. Okay, so let's go through this line by line. So this is what's happening here is we send the API URL from the front end. So user enters a URL, goes to the back end. The backend will pull the ID and get the various streaming options, like what kind of video playback can we get? Can we get HD? Can we get partial HD? Can we get 4K? What kind of options do we have? And that happens in the get streams function. So let's start there. So we get a URL from the response, going through it. Let's see, we get the video URL. So this is where it's using that function down below. Then we're going to add it to the URL. Now, the reason we did this is because not every YouTube URL is the same. So we want to pull the URL and just standardize the URL that we're sending into this package. But we're getting all the streams, saving them here, looping through the streams, getting all the data about those streams, compiling all that data, and then sending it back with a status complete. Okay, that's fine. That's actually a pretty good function there, I think. Then we're going to use the download view. So again, white space. Let's just go ahead and delete that. There we go. Oh, it looks so much better already. So we're going to get the video ID from the front end. The front end's going to save the video ID. It's going to give us the I tag. The I tag is like which stream it wants us to pull. Okay, then we're going to filter, do we already have that video saved or not? If we do, we're going to return the response. And if we have the cache domain, we're going to return this response. If we don't have cache domain, we're going to use just the default cache video URL, and we're going to send it back with a 200. So front end sends a request to the back end saying, hey, this user wants this specific stream. If we have it, we'll send it. And if we don't, it's going to basically start another thread. So we can end this response here. And it's going to start downloading that video to the site, saving it to the model. And it's going to respond with a 200 saying, yeah, it's good request, but without the URL. Now, there is a better way to do this, and it'll get modified eventually. Ideally, this would have something like URL is null, which in Python would be none. Now, when this gets converted to JSON, it should get converted to null or undefined. So ideally, this is how this would be set up. Other than that, it's looking pretty good. It's got some threading going, so that way it downloads the video off to the side. The rest of this doesn't look too bad, so we'll move on. But if you can already look from where we started to what we have now, it's already a much cleaner layout. There's still a lot to it, of course, but it's not all spread out and chaotic. It's condensed, it's all together. If you want to check out the settings file, you'll find out a lot by checking out the settings.py file. So we're going to open that up with not Google Chrome. That is wild. I did not know that could do that. We're going to open views.py with Atom, because that's what I use. Okay, so we are just simply returning a homepage reader. Oh, that's not the settings file. Duh. Settings.py, here we are. And we're going to open the URLs file, because we'll come back to that in a second. Secret key coming from environment variable, great. Debug true if host.getIn debug is true, else false. That's great. The reason they have this little section here is because when it pulls a getEnv, an environment variable, it's going to be a string format. So this is checking, is that string format going to be true or is it going to be false? You can also set it to be like, is it equal to 1 or 0 if you want to do like on, off, like binary for that. I just have it, typically set for true. So that's great. Allowed host.split. So this allows you to just include a string of allowed host split by a white space. So that's good. Salt apps. Okay, so we've got API, which is going to be that folder there. And we've got course headers and then all the default stuff. Okay, that's fine. We could probably go through some of the default stuff and potentially remove some of that, but I'm not too worried about that just yet. Again, CORS headers middleware. URL, okay, that's fine. Templates, it's all good. Database. So it looks like this is the default database setup Django gives you. The rest of the database stuff is going to be pulled from the environment variables. So that's great as well. Okay, and then it looks like we've got an AWS setup. This is going to be for spaces, for like object storage, S3 storage. And again, it's pulling from environment variables. So that's all great. CORS origin allow all. That's kind of, it's not ideal. If you're developing like mobile apps and stuff, you kind of have to. For a website, typically you want it to only allow requests from that website, so it's a little more secure. But the reason, I know the reason this is set this way is because there's two URLs using the same web application. What really needs to happen is one just redirects to the other, and this is just defaulted to one of them. So that would be tip number one, is try to do a redirect instead of both websites loading the same application, because that kind of gets tricky. Let's check out the urls.py. Okay, only 3 things in here. The first one's going to be to that redirect, which we saw in views.py. It's just a simple redirect to the React.js front end. That's fine. Admin site, okay. And API. So you'll notice right here, it's got API/v1.0. Now, this is something that I started doing when developing APIs. So if anytime I wanted to start developing version 2 without interrupting version 1, but it's kind of cohesive, you could simply duplicate this and have like a v2.0 and have both APIs going live at the same time. This would be like API 2 or something. Now, with that in mind, is really API here should really be like API 1.0 or something like that, 1_0, or just adding some version control there is really helpful. It is kind of annoying when you're using a lot of URLs and API endpoints and stuff, but for me, it's worth it. It's worth including that. Okay, so that's kind of the core configuration. The core configuration of this is actually pretty decent. So the main 3 things in this code review were: 1, keep it beautiful. If you're going to use Python, use it for what it was made for, and that's to write beautiful, simple code. Get rid of unnecessary white spaces, clean up your import statements, let it be beautiful code. Number 2 is to separate your functions that you're reusing into a different file. So you create a utils.py file and separate those over into that. Import them into the views.py file as you need them. That'll help clean up the code and make it a little more organized as you scale the project. And number 3 is version your APIs. As you can see here, we have versioning happening. Even if you don't think you're going to need it, just start from the get-go, because at some point you might have a 2.0, a 3.0, and so forth. And it's better to be prepared to scale from the beginning than to constrain everything and have to scale in the future. It's so much more difficult, and I explained this in the last video, 5 huge mistakes everyone makes with Django, is not creating scalability. This is one of those ways you create scalability, because now as we want to grow and modify and change things, we can do so without interrupting the existing application. So those 3 things are my final tips for this code review. Clean code, separate file for functions, and version your APIs.